Well, hello, everybody. I'm very glad that you decided to join me this morning because I am coffeeed up and ready to go. I hope you can see what I can see. My hope is that nothing goes wrong, but we'll see because Zoom likes errors on my end. So if things do go wrong, we'll pick back up and figure it out as we go. But send good vibes, fingers crossed that everything works perfectly for us this morning. So like I said, thank you for being here. I know it's a Saturday morning and it is very early, and I'm sure there's a lot of sleeping in that we would like to be doing. I surely would myself. But I very much appreciate you being here and spending a little bit of time with me. And even more important than all of that is thank you for the positions that you serve in your community. It is very important. It doesn't go unnoticed. And the reason that we are here today is for you. So I will give you a little bit of context about myself and what we're talking about here today. But before I get started, I did want to let you know that I will have both the chat and the question and answers as we go. So if there are things that you would like to ask as we go along, feel free to type them on in there and I can address them as we get through this presentation. It may be a quick second before I get to it, so if I'm not doing it immediately, don't fret. I definitely will get to it, but do use that feature. I will ask some questions throughout that will ask for some of your engagement. Nothing too serious, just typing out a quick answer, just so I can get a little bit of a pulse of where you all are at and what kind of things are in our community and how I can best interact with those things for you. So just to give you a little bit of information about myself, my name is Courtney Taylor. I serve as the role of coordinator of fraternity and sorority life in the Office of the Dean of Students at Bowling Green State University. I've been at Bowling Green State University since 2016 and I have been working with all of our student organizations for quite some time, but I specialize now with our fraternities and sororities. I'd like to point out I am in no way an expert in all things student organizations or advocacy, but in my time, I have had some good chances to observe areas for improvement among our student organizations when it came to advocating for their own needs. And so I felt especially compelled right now, given that we're in a pandemic and every organization's having their each individual roadblocks or things that they're trying to work through during this time, that providing information on advocacy could not only assist with bouncing back, but also translate well into the career world for those leaders also looking at their after college experience. So I hope that by being here with me today, I can provide you a little bit of information that I've gathered along the way to help you to be an excellent representative of your organization. So you each came here for a different reason today. I'm sure if I were to poll you, there would be very varied reasons and motives. However, the points that I'm going to speak on a little bit today are going to surround these following points. So maybe you're looking to advocate for your organization, but you don't know where to start or what advocating looks like. You could not know what to advocate for. It's possible you've advocated in the past and it hasn't gone well or hasn't been accepted. Or maybe you're just curious about advocacy for your organization in general. And I'm sure there's at least one person here who thought that this was the least boring option that they could attend for a session. And so for all of those people, I am very grateful that you are here. I hope that we can tap on all of those things. The first question that I want to ask, and you can just throw your answer down in the chat, it just gives me a little bit of a pulse of who I'm working with. If you could share with me and the rest of the attendees what organization you're representing. Who are you to that organization as far as leadership? Are you a general member? What is your identity when it comes to your organization? I'll take about 30 to 60 seconds just to see those responses and get an idea of who we're working with. Awesome. So it's looking like there's a pretty good split between people that are serving in positions of leadership, general membership, and those who may not yet be in organizations or either of those roles. And so that's pretty exciting to see that we have a lot of people with varied experience and varied influence within their organization. If you are here and you're not in a leadership role or you're not in an organization just yet, do know that this still is very, very important information that you can use in a lot of different areas as well. A lot of advocacy information actually comes from the area of career. So we'd like to make sure that as we're looking at this, you're not just using it specifically for how to ask for money for an organization. I don't focus a lot on that during this presentation. I focus on the general ask of advocacy and how you can implement it in many different ways. And so if it's something that you can't tangibly use today or tomorrow, use it for your career, use it for your next internship interview. I want to make sure that you're getting something out of this that may not necessarily be so siloed as to being student organization or leadership specific. So thank you for interacting with that. So we're going to go ahead and get on to what I hope that you're getting out of this presentation today. So the game plan for this session will go as follows. I want to tap into your organizational identities. Not you specifically, but your organization as one unit, right? What is this organization? What's it stand for? Why does it matter? So these are some of the qualities that should be up front and center and are needed to know who and what you're advocating for. Then we're going to navigate into your organization's worth. And so not your monetary worth or how many people you have in your organization. Those are arbitrary figures that are used for other things such as analytics, but your worth in respect to the ask that you may be trying to make. We'll take this information and delve deeper into it so we can see how it alters your direction. And then lastly, we're going to look at the act of advocating for your organization. So we're going to go over some of those details involved with making your ask and who even to ask. And then when all things are said and done, I hope that you're able to take this, formulate your ask, and successfully advocate for what your organization needs. So first, we're going to take a look at understanding your organization from the inside out. To do this, you need to break down your organization into a few different areas listed here on the screen. So today we're going to look at your organization's mission, vision, identity, and stakeholders. And as we go over each one, we're going to define them each specifically, how they impact your organization, and then the important role each one serves independently. And as we go through things, feel free to jot down any of your own organizational notes on these topics so you can come back to those initial thoughts. And then later on, when you go to try to implement your own advocacy, you have a touch point to start at. So looking first at mission. A powerful mission can be vitally important to your organization in a number of different ways. A mission statement isn't simply stating your organization's desire to be the best. Rather, it's a way of showing what makes your organization stand out and what makes your future so bright. In addition to stating your organization's values and purposes, mission statements actually can include a number of different elements as well. So they can convey your target, your position within your community, your objectives, among many other things. And when writing a mission statement, it's super important to understand the balance between the mission statement as part of your organization's public image and the mission statement as part of your organization's internal communications. Mission statements specifically guide the organization forward. So a mission statement is incredibly important when it comes to navigating, when you're thinking about the future and the direction of your organization. So by identifying the purpose of your work, you can better understand your goals, your organization should be committing to accomplishing. And once those goals are set, you and your organization can develop a sound strategy to achieve them. So by having this strong foundation, you can build your organization from the ground up, ensure its stability, and get through all those challenges that may be ahead of you. The mission statement's also the bedrock of any organization, so make sure it's as strong as it needs to be. Your organization will turn to this as a guideline for all of its future actions. And so at the same time, your potential audience can also judge your brand based off of its mission statement to decide whether it suits their own values or not. Mission statements are also a focus of where your energy and attention should go on a day-to-day interaction with your organization. The mission statement shouldn't just be your beginning. It should stay with you through every single decision that you make as you work towards your goals. The simplicity of the mission statement requires that you isolate only the most important part of your organization's purpose. So by developing a mission statement, you have the chance to evaluate every single option and decide what best suits your organization and its future. By talking through these decision processes with the mission statement, you can help your team work through problems and ideas. The mission statement opens this communication and can refocus your team as well. So, if you have been pulled in many different directions with making a decision, you can always reflect back on this mission statement to figure out what is the true north that that decision statement can help you with. Mission statements spark new ideas. While you're discussing and considering your mission statement, it may open you up to some new ideas as well. In fact, here's where the true value of getting everyone on board to contribute to the mission statement development process lies. So while it's important to have a solid foundation, the mission statement can also shift your perspective on your own work. It can cause you to look at your organization with a fresh set of eyes. That being said, a mission statement can always be changed over time, enabling you to adjust your statement in new directions that better suit your team and your own goals. It is, if you will, part of the ideation process, and it brings together multiple opinions and beliefs that every single member of your company can provide. Your mission statement also will shape your organizational culture. So, mission statements not only dictate how an organization should act, but also how individual members think about their roles. So, removing some of that uncertainty in their role by clearly explaining your organization's purpose and values, your members will know and learn to know before they start working with your organization exactly what's expected of them. And then they, in turn, can customize their work to fit your mission and get effective results for it, whatever it may be that you do. Your mission statement can also establish consistency. So as you're working to grow your organization, you will start to establish many different committees and recruiting of new members, right? So every step in growing your organization runs the risk of losing your focus or your culture, and a mission statement can stop this in its tracks. Everyone knows your mission statement. Everyone has something to refer to when making those important decisions. And your mission statement can make sure that each individual facet of your organization is working connected with every other piece. So to establish this consistency, a mission statement should be as clear as possible. Make sure there's no room for incorrect interpretation. And for the best results, have someone else review the mission statement before making it public, or get your entire team to voice out their own thoughts on it. Mission statements send out a powerful message to the public. A mission statement isn't merely a form of internal communication, it's one of the strongest messages you can send out to your public and your audience. Your audience will find the mission statement to be an effective encapsulation of your own values. And if you believe your mission statement does not represent these values or does not reach the audience you intended, it's time to reevaluate it. The statement should convey your organization's passion and vision in a way that intrigues and reassures the general public. When you look back at the introductory example of mission statements, you'll notice that they encompass broad ideals and goals, right? And so this idea leads to the last most important purpose of a mission statement, that mission statements drive action. So a mission statement is usually oriented around an action specifically. They're by no means created for the sake of having one. Instead, they're centered around the number one thing you want your team to achieve. So it may be the intention of your organization to create an outstanding product, but that isn't enough. What is your mission? How are you going to make people's lives better? Mission statements are a way of making this clear. They cut through the noise and get straight to the heart of your organization's passion and vision. Exciting, energetic mission statements show the public your organization's dedication and determination. They form a vital aspect of your communications. All right. Looking at the next piece, vision. A vision statement articulates the overreaching long-term goals of an organization. It's a look beyond the present to see what the future could be. A vision statement generally contains a superordinate goal, so something big to strive for. A mission statement tells you how you'll get there, but a vision statement is brief. One sentence, maybe two, that's it. And since it articulates a superordinate goal, it needn't be lengthy. A great vision statement does a lot of things. It provides a mental image of an extraordinary accomplishment the organization would like to achieve. It articulates the overreaching long-term goals of the enterprise, and it can look beyond the present to see what the future could be. It asserts what the organization can be at its best, and it presents a target that beckons. It reflects oftentimes what is unique about your organization. It is vivid, motivating, and memorable. If a vision statement is where you want to get, the mission is the bridge between where you are now and your vision. A vision and mission can unleash boundless constructive tension. Determining what you want your organization to accomplish and then verbalizing it not only sets the focus of the actions of the workers, but it also can inspire them. So effective vision and mission statements create a sense of urgency and give people something that they can set their sights on. A person performing even the most elementary tasks is not just a hired hand, but a partner in achieving the organization's goal. In this atmosphere, the likelihood of gaining the commitment of members is greatly enhanced because there's something real and genuine to commit to. Creating an organizational vision can generate the unity that leads to world-class performance. So, looking at both just mission and vision on their own, knowing a lot of organizations may have a mission or vision statement that may have been crafted at the start of their organization, it's very important for you to reflect on the fact that a long-standing mission and vision statement are just as effective as one that's regularly updated. For a lot of people, we may not have the ability to edit our mission and vision statements. However, that doesn't mean that the interpretation may be the same, and that doesn't mean that our actions have to be the same. So keep that in mind as we continue on. The next piece is organizational identity. Organizational identity is defined as an enduring, distinctive, and central statement perceived by an organization's members to answer questions such as, who are we? What are we doing? What do we want to be in the future? Organizational identity is important since it affects actions, interpretation, and decision-making of the organizational members. The criterion of distinctiveness emphasizes that the identity should be able to distinguish the organization from others. A distinctive identity usually includes specifying the organizational ideology, leadership philosophy, and culture. It helps the organization locate itself in a specific classification of other organizations. So organizational identity influences both those top level leaders and the general members within an organization. For organizational leaders, your org's identity is influential in your decision-making activities within that organization, right? So by defining the organization's identity, the leaders are able to create a fundamental base that serves as a guide for them to engage in the decision-making activities. The members are also affected by the organization's identity as well. So the interactions and comparisons that you have with other organizations outside your own are necessary to the formation of your own organization identity. And during that process, the members are constantly comparing their organization with organizations they perceive as comparable. And in turn, it affects the members' definition and identity of their own organization. And on the last piece, stakeholders. I'll use this word a lot, so I'll try to describe it as best as I can to make sense. If you have any questions after I describe it, feel free to drop those in the chat as well. So an organization is used simultaneously by different groups of stakeholders to accomplish and or further their own goals. It's the collective contributions of all stakeholders that are needed for an organization to be viable and to accomplish its mission of producing goods, services, presence on a campus, right? Each stakeholder group is motivated to contribute to that organization by its own set of goals. It may have its own boundaries that they have to live by. And each group evaluates the effectiveness of an organization by judging how well it meets the group's specific goals. So for example, for a lot of our student organizations on campus, an important stakeholder for you would be campus activities. And if you think about the way that you interact with campus activities, there are things that you ask for from that area, and there are things that that area can and cannot do for you based off of its own place on campus, its own rules, and its own guidelines. Shareholders or stakeholders and shareholders both evaluate an organization by the return that they receive on that investment, the size of their audience, its reliability, and its value relative to its own asks and its work. And then also the leaders and the membership. Often these stakeholders and the organizations may face a little bit of conflict, and need a little bit of negotiation to get through it. Groups must negotiate over the appropriate balance between gives and takes. We never want to see a student org be taken advantage of, but we also don't want a student org to be taking advantage of other areas in which they may be formulating that ask. To be effective, an organization must minimally satisfy the interest of all of their stakeholders to be successful. The needs of each group must be addressed, otherwise, a stakeholder might withdraw its support, and that could injure the future performance of the organization. So, moving into part 2, we'll move into how to determine your organization's worth and kind of move into the next step of pre-formulating your ask. We'll look at it very much like the last section by all these aspects individually. And it's important to remember that your worth isn't necessarily based around money or profit, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Your worth is a changeable figure and can always be increased. The first big piece is correlation with your organization's brand. Branding is an extremely important part of running your organization, and there's no dispute about that. Without branding, you run the risk of being confused about yourself, how others perceive you, and about your own messaging. Your design and your overall image are super important to your brand. But once you've developed your brand, you have to stay on brand. So before we get started, let's clear something up, right? There's no formula that will tell you whether you're staying on brand or not. This is not a black and white kind of issue. There's no saying yes or no, are you on track with your brand? But while there isn't a formula, there are a few things that can help you determine whether you're staying on brand in a conceptual way. So let's look at what branding is before we dive into what those key signs may be. Branding is a story you tell someone to influence them to choose you and your organization over someone else and theirs. Many people think branding just means a great logo, you've got pretty colors, some nice fonts. Branding, however, is a lot more than that, and it does include having an awesome logo and pretty colors and well-chosen fonts. However, it also encompasses a well thought out copy and compelling message that works with the emotional connections of your audience. Because branding goes well beyond graphic design, it's important to set up your brand for success. So there are a few signs that will inform you whether your brand choices have been successful. These are really great for determining whether you're staying on brand so you can continue down that path or determine where you need to make those changes to steer your brand in the right direction. So let's talk about a few of those signs. Firstly, and very obviously, if people flat out tell you they like your branding. When people start to mention how much they love the feel of your brand, and that's a very good sign, it can tell you that your branding efforts are paying off. That's the most simple way of figuring it out. So when you do get compliments about that, make sure to listen intently to those compliments and the things that people are saying you're doing right, because you're going to want more of this, but you're also going to want to continue to do more of this. Next, when you look at all your branding, it needs to look cohesive. Sometimes it's hard to look at all the content creation you pump out all at once. However, it's a good idea to do it. Check back on all your other content, make sure your designs are cohesive, and make it a point to look at things like your Instagram, your Twitter, your Facebook, if you have a TikTok. This will help you see your branding as a whole, and then work on the design of the individual item while keeping in mind what your brand looks like when you put all these elements together. A lot of people may mention, treat your Instagram as a magazine spread. Do this same idea with your branding too. Make sure it all works well together. It's fluid, it's cohesive. One of the easiest ways to start this process is just by making sure that your cover photo, your profile picture, your cover image for all of your social media accounts for your organization are the same picture. That's a huge piece to making sure that people can recognize you and follow your brand. Next, non-members should be able to describe your brand in a few short words. Another kind of trickier way of determining whether you're staying on brand or not is to reach out to your audience, those who are not members, and ask them to describe your brand. Are they using words that are the same words you've described the brand as? And if they are, awesome. That means that you're doing an excellent job at communicating your brand. But words may not be the exact same. Maybe they're using close synonyms. Maybe they're using complete opposite words that you would use to describe your brand. And that would show that you're not correlating properly with your brand. It's also a really good opportunity to find new words to describe your brand. And so if you're looking to refresh your image, that's an excellent way of getting public feedback into what do they see and is this something that I would like to continue to do. Lastly, you'll want your audience to feel that feel exactly what you intended when they interact with your brand. So if you want them to feel uplifted, welcomed, when they look at your branding, that is what you should be focusing on when you're asking them those questions. If they're not responding with those general sentiments, that's a huge indicator that you're not correlating with your brand. Make sure to take note too of those instances and try to do more of what you're doing to stay on this path of success. Another way of measuring this would be the buy-in of your membership. And so it's not always necessary to get your members to agree with the decisions you've made as a leader. It's just not always going to happen. However, if your members don't agree with the changes or decisions that you're making, your goal is to motivate them to put the effort into the work no matter what. And so you have to establish your own buy in or the understanding that a decision is necessary for your organization to succeed and that they need to accept it to make progress. When members accept decisions or changes, they're more likely to be productive when tasked with projects. However, buy in is not necessarily receiving 100% agreement from every member. You don't need members to eagerly agree with whatever comes out of your mouth. That's just not realistic and it shouldn't be an expectation. However, you don't need your members to eagerly agree, but that buy in is still necessary to support whatever happens with that organization. And so the difference between agreeing and supporting being that supporting a decision does not require agreement. There will probably be members that don't agree with your decisions at some point during your leadership, but they will need to be able to support them. And support requires acceptance of the decision and the ability to continue working at the best possible quality. Organization members need to believe that the leadership also has the best interests of the members in their mind when they're making these decisions. So whether or not your members buy into a decision can depend on three different aspects, right? The character of your leadership, the factors behind the decision, and the benefits of a decision to all the stakeholders. You should sell your members on the features and benefits of every decision you're making. As you develop changes or make decisions that will affect your organization, you should consider how you're going to communicate the reasons for the decision. So, selling your decisions isn't always necessary, but it is really good for helping to make decisions that might cause conflict. So, if you've already communicated the reason for a decision, you could consider letting your members know how it will affect them. Decisions can sometimes come with both good and bad news. So, a good approach is to be prepared to outweigh the bad news with the benefits. Do your diligence before implementing any changes or decisions. And if you can't find any features or benefits of a decision to outweigh member concerns, it might be best as you being the leader to reconsider that decision because changes that affect people's work-life balance are going to be met with a lot of resistance until there's a good reason behind it. When there is an acceptable reason, that reason should be broadcast to every person affected with the utmost transparency. And so member engagement, it's the act of developing an environment where people are actively focused on and interested in their work. This doesn't require you to have fascinating work, but sometimes work is just work. But people need to feel like their presence and contribution is valued to remain engaged in that work. And if they buy into the direction the organization is taking, that mission, that vision, and the changes being implemented, you'll have members who are more engaged in the organization. Engaged members will work harder and they'll treat each other better when they know that their leadership supports their time, their effort, and their membership. The next part is key contributions. So the hard work needs to be in areas and projects that are the same ones prioritized by your organization to show value. You need to have a crystal clear understanding of what your goals are, as well as what your stakeholders consider important. So for example, let's say your stakeholder is looking for, increased event creation from your organization. They want new ideas, they want creative events that they can bring to students on our campus. So you might spend time developing ideas to help bring more people to your events and collaboration mechanisms to pull some of the work off your organization and share that with others. But if your efforts aren't focused on generating the right results that your stakeholders want, then all of that effort isn't really going to help your case for getting more support or perks. You can also make the case for why your efforts mattered as long as they're in sync with your stakeholders' values. So maybe their goal wasn't realistic for your organization, but what you provided was beyond what they asked. Voice this. Advocate that your organization produced the same outcome or better using a different process and that the overall success was the same. They'll be looking at some of these things that are on the screen as far as what kind of things they have an affinity towards as an entity of an institution, as a nonprofit, just as a stakeholder that could be influencing your ability to succeed. Awesome. So the next piece is a little bit more on, it's a little bit more building on those key contributions, but also your irreplaceable features, right? You always want to be an organization that's considered irreplaceable. That shows that you have the utmost value on campus and that it is recognized. So to build that organizational worth, you have to become some type of irreplaceable. It's why we've first and foremost work through with our brand to become unique and independently valued. One strategy is to find ways to make the audience rely on you and struggle to imagine life without you. Identify a student or a group's problem and solve it for them on an ongoing basis. Maybe you notice that a lot of students don't have a place to study. Create an ongoing space for students to gather. And then they will have that space as an irreplaceable space for their academic success. Or maybe you see people struggling to find very passive artistic events on campus. Perfect. Capitalize on that niche. And
Oh no, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the presentation so far. It does look like Courtney's internet just booted her out. So we'll just give her a few minutes to get connected back in. Until then, if you have any thoughts, comments, or questions while she gets reconnected, drop those in the chat so that we can go ahead and answer those when she gets back. So just give us a few moments and I'll update you if there'll be a long delay. It does look like Courtney's been able to get back to us. So thank you all for your patience and I will turn it right back over to Courtney.
Thank you. Sorry, Zoom's giving me some new error codes today. I am not sure where those came from. You know, we'll work through them because that's what I'm supposed to do. But it's been an adventure. So I'll go back to somewhat at the beginning of this because I don't actually know when I got kicked off because it doesn't tell me. However, on the topic of irreplaceable features, the end goal for your organization is to be an irreplaceable and super valued organization on campus. One of the most important ways to do that is make a space where students value you. It's super important too that our stakeholders find us valuable, but they will see our work through what our student experience is for our audience, right? So when we're trying to serve a specific purpose for a lot of the students on campus and those who are considered our audience, make it so people wouldn't succeed without you. Like I think I mentioned, who knows if you heard it, if people are looking for a place to study, be that place to study. If people are looking for passive artistic events, be the place that has passive artistic events on campus and then be the best at it. It's going to help you not only with being irreplaceable, but it's also going to help you with making connections, right? Because the end goal is you want your members to be able to network, you want people to connect. To be kind of cheesy, you want people to belong. That's the whole point of why we came to a campus and decided to live residentially. For a lot of us, it's to make those connections, to meet people who are like us and to better ourselves. So another piece that goes with this is to make sure that you generate a significant return on your members' investment, right? You want to add a perk to your membership that is very unique to your membership. So find a way to make the experience benefit the future career. Link people up with former members for opportunities upon graduation. Get people cords for graduation. That's a super quick and easy way to make sure that they keep you in their minds as they move into their next steps. The ideas are endless and they can benefit someone for much more than just a 4 to 5 year experience. Lastly, you can attain a lot for becoming the best. And I don't put this simply either. So if you're looking to put in an incredibly hard effort to make your organization the best provider on campus, that's also an option. The greater your product, the harder it is for your organization to be replicated or competed with. There we go. So this is going to be our last major section, right? We're going to look at the actual action of your ask. So if you've been sitting here and like, I don't understand how this has anything to do with me actually advocating, this is the section in which we're going to do that part. So by this point, we've already discussed your organization's identity and its worth. So we'll package those two aspects into how to make things happen. In this section, we're going to take a critical look at designing your ask and doing some work prior to asking and identifying who would best benefit in collaboration, and then whom to ask. So, firstly, it's not greedy or entitled to ask for a good service or even finances. Put that whole slated idea out of your head that it would be inappropriate. Assuming that your stakeholder is even a little bit reasonable or has had any previous experience working with student organizations, they're going to know it's normal for people to ask for a deal. And even if your stakeholder doesn't ultimately say yes, you're not likely to damage that relationship by making the request as long as A, you're not asking for something that's wildly out of sync with the environment, and B, you have a track record of very strong work. You aren't likely to fall out of favor just because you asked to make a deal. A good first place to start with this process is to gather all of your knowledge. So you should be able to have a good idea of your organization's mission, vision, and values, and be able to identify a specific stakeholder's needs and wants. You should also be able to identify your value to the campus, what needs you fill, your unique qualities, and what makes your organization stand out. Using this information, you should be able to identify one thing your organization wants and is willing to offer in return. This thing should be tangible. And as an example, while we all want more exposure, exposure is a construct, right? But if we want exposure as the goal, then we need to ask for something specific and physical, such as, being featured on the campus website. This would be a concrete ask. We also have to be reasonable with our ask. So it would be more harmful for us to waltz in asking for a Mercedes when we just got our learner's permit. Sometimes we need to take a step back, reevaluate what's mutually beneficial to request. If we ask for something large, we need to be prepared to commit ourselves to doing the work it takes to make that happen. For example, if you request $100,000 in funding to host a concert and it's granted, you need to be prepared to tell your organization that you're going to devote the time to host an $100,000 concert correctly so that it's worth that money that you're getting, right? So your organization may not sign on to this level of work if it's not transparently discussed prior, and you need to honor the ability of your organization and know that that's crucial for advocating for them. We also need to approach our ask with our research done, right? So many times we'll format our ask based on what we assume is possible from the powers that be, right? Like I said earlier, everybody's got a set of rules that they're playing by. But every group has its own limits, whether we see them or not, and our job is to do our research. So ask questions. Know why they're saying no. Know why they're saying yes. And on the same example from earlier, if we're going to ask for $100,000 to host a concert, we should probably find out if any organization's ever received $100,000 from the university before. If the last highest amount given was only $1,000, our likelihood's very, very slim. However, if we're asking for $2,000 for something and the last highest give was $1,000, that ask is a lot more manageable. The last piece to designing your ask is removing your own biases. Our own biases unfairly place emphasis on what it is that we think is important over what is actually valued, right? So let's go back to this concert. We are going to host a $100,000 polka concert on campus, right? That's so reasonable for our organization, and we can't see another way out of that. However, maybe our university is not about polka, but we really like punk rock. The university's not going to give us $100,000 to bring a polka artist when every student is just absolutely infatuated with punk rock. You have to know that you may have a bias for something that is not necessarily valued by the larger institution. So, looking at what your bargaining chips are with that, if you don't know what your market rate is for what you're asking or your own self worth, this is where that research comes in. This becomes important because with any ask, you open up the door to bargaining. And firstly, consider forming those alliances. Collective bargaining is going to be your friend. Grouping up with other organizations will be super important when asking for things. This only strengthens the ask, not only strengthens the ask, but it makes sure that the outcome for the stakeholder is more stable. It also provides organizations a chance to provide for their members and the larger community. So make sure that when you are doing this, you are also considering your successes and your failures. It's very embarrassing to be asked about a time that you failed and not be prepared to answer that question. And so be ready for these conversations. And if you failed, own it and acknowledge what you did wrong and how you work to grow past it. On the flip side, if you have excelled, make sure to brag about it. There's nothing wrong with emphasizing what you're good at. Another piece would be to discuss your accomplishments, but not solely with finances. While your ask may be for financing, discussing dollar signs can be uncomfortable if that's the priority. And so, in place of this, discuss attributes of your ask that prove for responsibility, strength in a specific area, and your overall contribution to a greater cause. Discuss the things that would make you a good partner. And the last tip on here would be to always enter with a backup plan in place. Know what your next move is if you're not granted that opportunity. The next part would be looking for your strong collaborations, right? Those partnerships that you can get with other people. If you don't know, if you don't know what it is that you're asking for, do that research, see who else would be really good for that, right? Look at groups that are doing the same work, that are trying to work towards the same common goal, and make sure that people are very aware what you're asking for, right? Um, if you're doing this asking, you're making the ask. You want to make sure that you are sharing those values at the end, that the base level of all of the members is the same general idea. You may not have completely matching values, but you want to make sure that you're bringing them all back to the same set of overall mission, vision, values, and university values, right? We want to make sure that the things that we are asking for are reasonable and that they're going to be believed. And so here is the next part, right? Locating the sweet spot. You're going to make that ask. You want to make sure that it's mutually beneficial, right? So you're going to be doing this asking, you're making the offer, you're buying the house. You want to make it enticing and irresistible, right? No one likes a boring offer. Nobody's going to want to eat a Brussels sprout for 25 cents. However, if you offer them 25,000, Brussels sprouts seem a little bit more appealing, right? So consider the context in which you're asking and identify those barriers up front, right? Make sure that if you're asking for, a specific event like bringing a snow cone machine to campus, that it's not the middle of winter. Make sure that if you're going to do this, you're probably going to have to find out how loud a snow cone machine is and if you can have it in an academic building. Think about this stuff before you're asked so that when you go in, you can give a concrete and tangible program proposal or ask for something that has been well thought out and very well developed. And then lastly, looking at what that goal is to fulfill different needs, not just your own, not just your organization's own goals. Making sure that the end goal is really to help the campus community to flourish a little bit more, to help different student populations, different audiences. The more you can add on, the better your ask will appear. And then lastly, comparisons will be fruitful to your offer. So if you've seen it done really well somewhere else, gather information about what made that so well and how they did it, and present that. Make that your sweet spot. Show that a comparable organization or a comparable institution did this just as well, and you can assure it's going to be like this as well. So this is real quick and easy. you have to know what happens if they say yes or no, right? And so let's do a quick glance into what does that look like. So if you're dealing with an approved ask, take the opportunity to celebrate how awesome that is first. But then make sure that you provide updates on your accomplishments, what you learned, and the impact that was observed, right? You want to keep that beneficial relationship with your stakeholder and make sure that you have the opportunity to reignite it later on in life. Next, say thank you. Thank you goes a long way and can be the key to unlocking future partnerships and new stakeholders. Then make sure you publicize that agreement, right? So if you score an awesome partnership, share that information respectfully, whether that's an article on your organization's website or a logo on the flyer or even a thank you post. For a stakeholder, it shows that you appreciate them. And for other people, it could show that you're a valuable partner and they should look into you next time. And then lastly, document the experience in your transition notes. Future people are going to want to know how in the world did you score a deal like this, right? Document every piece of it as you go along so that you can pass that on to their future leaders of your organization. However, they could say no. And so here's a few different things that you should remember if this does happen, because odds are they're not saying no because of you and they're not saying no because of their organization. It is human nature to be absolutely livid when you get rejected, but you pleaded your case, you backed up your argument with facts and accomplishments. It's natural to feel personally hurt and angry, right? So make sure that you're not taking that as you're not good enough. It's the situation that just did not pan out. So stay calm, reevaluate, ask for feedback. Don't be a jerk is huge. And then focus on your next steps. Know what you're going to do no matter what. You don't want to go into that thinking that this is the end all be all. So, what's the bottom line, right? You want to make sure that you are coming into this knowing what your ask is, that your organization is strong and that it knows its identity. Advocacy is not easy, but I'm sure during this entire session, you've wondered why you even advocate. It seems complicated, it could be a lot of work, but advocating for your organization is more than just advocating for money. You can use this process for recognition, for rights, for space. You can use this process for your own self gain when advocating for yourself in an internship or job. You can empower your organization members to fight for their own endeavors. So I hope from this session you were able to grasp a little bit of that skill so that you can take your leadership skills a step further and forward. If there is anything that I can help you with in any point of the future, feel free to contact me. I am always here to connect, help you to formulate that ask, and to figure out who you need to talk to make things happen. Thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day with all these amazing sessions.